Ambassador Min Jun Kim walked through the long hallways of Nexus Prime Station. Her black diplomatic uniform carried the small blue Earth symbol on the shoulder. Around her, aliens from dozens of worlds moved toward the main council chamber. Today would decide if two major alien empires would stop fighting or continue their war. Min Jun had spent 3 months preparing for this meeting. She studied both sides of the conflict between the Zalari Empire and the Threx Coalition. The humans had become known across the galaxy for solving problems other species could not fix. They had special skills in understanding emotions and finding patterns that others missed. The council chamber was huge. Floating platforms held representatives from hundreds of different worlds. The Zalari delegation sat on the left side with their blue scaled skin gleaming under the lights. Their leader, Commander Zaxhal, had 3 rows of sharp teeth that showed when he spoke. On the right side, the Threx Coalition gathered around their speaker, General Korthvan. His people looked like giant insects with 4 arms and compound eyes. Min Jun took her place at the center platform. The other council members looked down at her from higher positions. The ancient ethereal collective floated in energy forms near the top. The proud Draknari sat in gold chairs that showed their importance. The peaceful Silrani whispered among themselves in their musical language. Councillor Vextar of the Ethereals called the meeting to order. His voice came from a glowing cloud of light. We gather to resolve the territorial dispute between the Zalari Empire and the Threx Coalition. Both sides have presented their claims. Now we will hear from the human mediator. Min Jun stood and activated her holographic display. Charts and maps filled the air around her. Honored council members, I have studied this conflict for many weeks. Both sides have valid concerns about resources and territory. I propose a solution that addresses these needs fairly. All. The hologram showed a detailed plan. It divided the disputed systems based on which species could best use each planet. Mining worlds went to the Zalari, who needed metals for their technology. Agricultural planets went to the Threx, who were skilled farmers. Trade routes would be shared equally. Cultural sites, sacred to either species, would remain protected. This framework ensures both empires get what they truly need, Min Jun explained. It also creates economic benefits through cooperation instead of conflict. Trade between your peoples could make both sides richer than war ever could. The plan was careful and complete. It took into account the emotional needs of both species. The Zalari valued honor and strength, so they received the more dangerous mining operations. The Threx prized family and growth, so they got the fertile worlds perfect for raising young. Commander Zaxhal studied the display with interest. His scales changed color slightly, showing he was thinking hard about the proposal. General Korthvan clicked his mandibles, a sign his people made when they found something useful. But before either could speak, Councillor Vextar interrupted with a sound like static electricity. These proposals show the limited thinking we have come to expect from this species. These, Fire 40, this peen, the chamber fell silent. Min Jun felt her heart beat faster, but kept her face calm. She had experienced prejudice before, but never so openly in a formal council meeting. The human species joined galactic society only 3 years ago, Vextar continued. His energy form pulsed with different colors. When my people mastered space travel, these mammals were still discovering fire on their primitive world. They lack the mental development to understand truly complex diplomatic situations. Representative Gorthon of the Draknari nodded his massive head. His people looked like dragons covered in golden scales. The Draknari have negotiated treaties for 10,000 years. These newcomers think they can solve in months what has challenged mature civilizations for decades. Their emotional thinking clouds rational judgment. Other council members began to murmur agreement. The insect-like hive speakers clicked in their harmonic language. The stone-skinned eternal guard remained silent, but their glowing eyes showed disapproval. Humans rely too heavily on feelings and intuition. added Counselor Thexra of the Quantum Collective. Her crystalline form sparkled as she spoke. True diplomacy requires pure logic and mathematical precision. These organic limitations make them unsuitable for serious negotiations. Minjun felt anger rising in her chest but forced herself to remain professional. With respect, counselors, the proposal addresses specific, measurable concerns. Resource allocation, territorial boundaries, and economic projections are all based on concrete data. Data filtered through primitive emotional bias. Vextar dismissed. We appreciate human efforts to help, but this matter requires the wisdom of older species. The ethereal collective will take over these negotiations. The Zilari commander started to speak, but Vextar silenced him with a gesture. Both empires will present their cases to a proper tribunal of senior species. Humans may observe, but will not participate in the decision. General Korthvan's compound eyes focused on Minjun with what looked like sympathy. His species understood cooperation, and they had worked well with humans before. But he could not speak against the council's senior members without risking his own people's standing. The session dissolved into formal procedures, as the council dismissed the human proposal without proper consideration. Representatives from both warring sides gathered their materials and left the chamber without reaching any agreement. The careful work Minjun had done meant nothing to species who judged by age rather than ability. As the chamber emptied, Minjun packed her documents slowly. 3 months of research and preparation had been thrown away in minutes. Not because the plan was bad, but because humans were considered too young and emotional to understand real diplomacy. She walked to a private communications booth and opened a secure channel to Earth. The transmission would take several minutes to reach her home planet. But her message was simple. Ambassador Kim, reporting from Nexus Prime. Peace talks between Zilari and Threx have failed. Council rejected human mediation based on species prejudice rather than plan evaluation. Requesting immediate recall to discuss future diplomatic strategy. She paused before adding the most important part. Recommendation: complete withdrawal from all galactic mediation roles. If they want sophisticated solutions from mature civilizations, let them handle their own problems. Minjun closed the communication and left the station. Behind her, 2 empires remained at war, while the Council congratulated itself on maintaining proper diplomatic hierarchy. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when they rejected the one species that actually knew how to make peace. Earth's response came within a week of Ambassador Kim's report. The message was brief and clear. All human diplomatic personnel would begin immediate withdrawal from galactic mediation roles. But Earth was clever about how they handled the situation. They did not announce their decision or make angry statements. Instead, humans simply stopped saying yes when aliens asked for help. Dr. Sarah Park received the orders while working on the beautiful world of Silros Prime. She had spent 2 years studying how different alien species thought and felt. Her research helped human diplomats understand what motivated their alien partners. The Silrani people had become close friends with humans because both species valued art, music, and peaceful cooperation. I don't understand, said Lithara, her Silrani research partner. The graceful alien's silver skin shimmered with patterns that showed confusion. Your work here is so important. We have learned so much together about how minds work across different species. Sarah packed her equipment carefully. Her laboratory had been full of fascinating discoveries about alien psychology. She had figured out why some species made decisions based on logic, while others used emotions. This knowledge had helped humans solve conflicts that seemed impossible to others. My government has decided to focus our research efforts elsewhere, Sarah explained gently. She did not want to hurt her friend's feelings by explaining the real reason. But I will always treasure the time we spent working together. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. Trade negotiator James Chen canceled 3 major economic summits that would have prevented trade wars between different species. The aliens organizing these events felt confused and worried. Humans had become essential for managing complex business relationships between species that did not trust each other. "Surely you can delay your departure," pleaded merchant Prince Vashtor of the Regilian Commerce Guild. His purple tentacles writhed with anxiety. The Antaran silk traders and the Centauri Mineral Consortium are still fighting over shipping routes. Without human mediation, we may see economic warfare. James finished downloading files from his office computer. 6 months of careful work had created trade agreements that made everyone richer while avoiding conflicts. "I'm confident that mature civilizations can handle these negotiations using their superior diplomatic methods," he said with a polite smile. On the frontier world of Haven's Rest, Colonial Governor Park Min-soo oversaw the evacuation of human settlements from disputed border regions. These communities had served as neutral zones where different species could meet safely. Human presence had prevented dozens of small conflicts from growing into major wars. The evacuation was remarkably efficient. Human transport ships arrived on schedule and loaded families and equipment with military precision. Within 3 days, settlements that had taken years to build were completely empty. The surrounding alien colonies watched in amazement as humans moved with perfect coordination. "Where will you go?" asked Captain Zethral of the Canthari Defense Force. His wolf-like species had worked closely with humans to patrol the border regions. "These worlds need neutral mediators. Without you, the territorial disputes will restart immediately." Governor Park supervised the loading of the last transport ship. "We're returning to human space, where our primitive methods won't interfere with sophisticated alien solutions," she replied calmly. The most significant withdrawal came when Admiral Lee So-young recalled the Human Defense Corps from joint peacekeeping operations. Human military forces had been essential for maintaining stability in regions where multiple species competed for resources. Their ships were not the most powerful, but human officers had an unusual gift for preventing conflicts before they started. A Silrani delegate named Keth Ani visited Admiral Lee's flagship before the human fleet departed. The peaceful aliens had relied on human protection to maintain their cultural preserves on disputed worlds. "We do not understand this decision," Kethani sang in the musical Silrani language. Her crystalline voice carried deep sadness. "Our peoples have worked together so well. Why do humans abandon their friends?" Round. Admiral Lee stood on her ship's bridge watching the stars. Human vessels were preparing to jump back to Earth space after months of successful peacekeeping. "We were told that our emotional thinking and primitive methods were inadequate for serious diplomatic work. We're simply giving the galaxy space to pursue more mature solutions." The Admiral's words were polite, but firm. Humans had been insulted and dismissed by the Galactic Council. Now they would see how well the galaxy managed without human help. As human ships disappeared into hyperspace, the aliens they left behind began to worry. Trade routes that humans had carefully negotiated started showing problems. Species that had cooperated under human guidance began arguing over small details. Border patrols that had worked together for months suddenly faced territorial disputes. But most aliens still believed they were better off without human interference. The Galactic Council had made it clear that humans were too primitive and emotional for serious responsibility. Surely the older, wiser species could handle their own problems more effectively. On Earth, President Lee Ga-young met with her senior advisors to discuss the withdrawal. The room was quiet, as diplomats and military officers reported on their return to human space. "All personnel have been successfully extracted," reported Foreign Minister Kim De-sol. "Our allies are confused, and some are upset, but no one was abandoned in immediate danger." "What about ongoing conflicts that we were mediating?" asked the president. Defense Minister Park Kyung-min consulted his tablet. 17 active disputes have lost human mediation. Early intelligence suggests some of these situations are already getting worse without our involvement. The president nodded thoughtfully. "We will monitor the situation carefully. If our friends truly need help, We will consider how to assist them. But we will not beg to be included in a system that considers us inferior. Meanwhile, the first cracks were appearing in galactic stability. Without human early warning systems, radical groups began moving more freely. Without human economic mediation, trade disputes escalated into serious conflicts. Without human emotional intelligence, species that had learned to cooperate began returning to old prejudices and fears. The galaxy was about to discover that primitive methods and emotional thinking had been holding their civilization together. But that lesson would come at a terrible cost that no one yet imagined. The war between the Zellari Empire and the Threx Coalition exploded into violence 3 weeks after humans stopped mediating. Without Min-Jun Kim's careful peace framework, both sides returned to their old habits of demanding total victory. The Galactic Council tried to solve the problem using traditional methods, but their approach only made things worse. Councillor Vex Tar of the Ethereal Collective proposed economic sanctions against both empires until they agreed to stop fighting. The proud Draknari suggested military intervention to force a ceasefire. The ancient Titan Lords recommended placing both species under galactic oversight until they learned to behave properly. None of these ideas addressed the real problems that had caused the war. The Zellari still needed metal for their technology. The Threx still needed farmland to feed their growing population. Instead of finding ways to meet these needs, the Council focused on punishment and control. Commander Zaxhal of the Zellari rejected the Council's demands with contempt. "We will not bow to species who offer nothing but threats and lectures. The Zellari Empire will take what we need by force if necessary." General Korthvan of the Threx felt the same way. His people had watched the Council dismiss human solutions without even trying them. If the wise elders cannot provide better answers than the humans they rejected, why should we listen to their orders? Fighting spread across 12 star systems as both empires sent their battle fleets into action. Planets that had been peaceful trading posts became battlefields. Civilian populations fled their homes as orbital bombardments destroyed cities and farms. The death toll mounted daily while the Council argued about proper procedures for intervention. The Antaron succession crisis became even worse. Prince Hyun-Soo of House Antara had been working with human diplomats to resolve complex family disputes about who should rule their people. The Antarans had unusual customs where leadership passed through both blood relations and adoption bonds that crossed species lines. Human specialists had spent months learning these traditions and finding a solution that honored Antaran culture. But when the humans left, the Galactic Council applied standard eldest child succession rules that ignored everything important about Antaran society. 4 different claimants declared themselves the rightful ruler. Princess Minna controlled the industrial worlds with her fleet of automated factories. Lord Sung-Ho commanded the agricultural systems that fed the entire Antaran domain. General Young Jin held the military bases that protected trade routes. Scholar Sujin had support from the intellectual centers that developed new technology. Each claimant had valid reasons to rule based on different aspects of Antaran law. In human mediation, this would have led to a power-sharing agreement that used everyone's strengths. Under Galactic Council intervention, it became a 4-way civil war that tore the Antaran civilization apart. Battles raged across the core worlds as family members fought family members. Ancient cities burned as different factions competed for control. Millions of Antarans became refugees, fleeing the violence that destroyed their peaceful society. The economic situation grew just as bad. The quantum trade accords had taken 2 years of human work to create. They balanced the needs of 17 different species in a complex web of agreements about shipping routes, resource prices, and technology sharing. Every species got something they needed while giving up something they could spare. But trade agreements need constant attention to handle small problems before they become big ones. When merchant ships arrived late, or cargo got damaged, or new planets joined the trading network, human negotiators had quietly fixed these issues. They understood that keeping everyone happy was more important than following rules exactly. Without human oversight, small problems grew into major crises. The Mercantile Union accused the Artisan Guild of violating quality standards for manufactured goods. The guild claimed the union was manipulating shipping schedules to favor their own merchants. Instead of finding compromises, both sides hired lawyers and prepared for economic warfare. Captain Kim Da-eun commanded a human patrol ship monitoring the border regions near former human colonies. Her crew had orders to observe and report, but not to intervene in alien conflicts. Through their sensors, they watched refugee fleets fleeing the spreading wars. "Captain, we're receiving distress calls from an Antaron civilian convoy," reported Lieutenant Park Jun-ho from the communications station. "Their engines are failing, and they're drifting toward Zilari battle lines." Da-eun studied the tactical display with a heavy heart. 3,000 Antaron families were trapped between mechanical failure and approaching warships. In the past, human ships would have immediately moved to assist. Now, they could only watch. "Are they requesting our aid directly?" she asked. "No, Captain. Their messages are general distress calls. They haven't specifically asked for human assistance." The captain understood the situation. The refugees knew that humans were no longer welcome as mediators in galactic affairs. They would rather risk death than ask for help from species the Council had declared primitive and unfit for serious responsibility. Dr. Chen Wei-Ming worked alone in his private research station, monitoring the collapse of joint scientific projects across the galaxy. 3 major research initiatives that had promised breakthrough discoveries were falling apart as alien species returned to competitive secrecy. The Quantum Consciousness Project had been close to understanding how different species processed thoughts and emotions. Human insights into psychology had been essential for making progress. Without human participation, the remaining scientists began hoarding their data and accusing each other of theft. The Stellar Engineering Consortium had been designing new types of space stations that could support dozens of different species. Human architects had solved the complex environmental challenges of creating shared living spaces. Now the project split into separate efforts as each species decided to build their own stations. The Galactic Archive Initiative had been collecting and preserving knowledge from all member civilizations. Human librarians had developed systems for translating concepts between wildly different cultures. Without their work, participating species began withdrawing their contributions and creating private databases. Wei-Ming watched the collapse with scientific fascination and personal sadness. Decades of potential progress were being lost because older species could not accept that younger ones might have valuable contributions. The galaxy was choosing pride over advancement, tradition over innovation. On Nexus Prime Station, junior council members began expressing doubts about their leaders' decisions. Ambassador Thal of the Meridian Confederacy was young for a diplomat but old enough to see patterns in the growing chaos. "The conflicts are spreading faster than our ability to contain them," he reported to his government. "Every solution we attempt seems to make situations worse rather than better." The senior counselors remained convinced that their methods were correct and the results were temporary setbacks. They blamed the problems on alien stubbornness rather than their own inadequate responses to complex situations. But Thal and others like him began to notice something important. Human space remained completely peaceful while the rest of the galaxy burned with conflicts. No wars, no trade disputes, no succession crises. The primitive emotional thinkers were managing their affairs better than the sophisticated mature civilizations. The galaxy was learning a painful lesson about the difference between age and wisdom, between tradition and effectiveness. But the learning process was costing lives that human mediation might have saved. The Void Seekers struck without warning across 6 different star systems on the same day. Their coordinated attacks caught the galaxy completely unprepared because no one had been watching for this kind of threat. In the past, human intelligence officers had carefully monitored extremist groups and shared warnings that prevented such organized violence. Agent Kim Seo-jun had once led a network of informants that tracked radical movements across the galaxy. His team had identified the Void Seekers as a growing danger months before their attacks. But when humans withdrew from galactic security cooperation, this vital intelligence work ended. The Void Seekers were a military cult that believed only the strongest species deserved to survive. They recruited members from militaristic races who felt frustrated by peace treaties and diplomatic solutions. Their philosophy was simple. Conquest was natural, cooperation was weakness, and the galaxy needed purification through warfare. Their leader was a former Draknari general named Korithmal, who had been expelled from his people's military for excessive violence. He gathered followers from species that valued strength above all else. They called themselves Seekers because they sought a galaxy ruled by military might rather than diplomatic compromise. The first attack hit the peaceful Meridian research colonies. These worlds had no military defenses because they focused on scientific discovery and cultural exchange. Void Seeker raiders destroyed orbital laboratories and enslaved the populations for forced labor. Simultaneously, strikes devastated trade hubs in the Centauri sector. Commercial stations that served dozens of species became burning wrecks as the cultists seized cargo ships and murdered civilian crews. The raiders moved quickly between targets using stolen hyperspace technology. The most devastating assault targeted refugee camps holding displaced Antarans. Families fleeing their civil war found themselves facing an even worse enemy. The Void Seekers saw refugees as evidence of weakness that needed to be eliminated from the galaxy. General Park Sung-ho received desperate emergency communications at his headquarters on Earth. Multiple species were begging for help as their defenses collapsed under coordinated assault. The messages came through old diplomatic channels that had been nearly forgotten since humans withdrew from galactic affairs. "Sir, we're getting priority distress calls from 17 different systems," reported Major Lee Jin-A from the communications center. "Casualty reports are massive. The attackers seem to know exactly where to hit for maximum damage." Park studied the tactical displays with growing concern. The Void Seekers had studied the galaxy's new, fragmented condition carefully. While major species fought each other or argued in council sessions, the extremists had prepared for simultaneous strikes that would overwhelm divided defenses. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session as reports of destruction poured in from across known space. Counselor Vextar attempted to coordinate a response using traditional methods. But his people's approach of forming committees and studying options proved catastrophically slow. "We must establish a proper chain of command," Vextar announced to the panicked assembly. "The Ethereal Collective will form a strategic planning committee to analyze the threat. Results will be available in 72 hours. 72 hours while colonies burned and civilians died. Other council members began shouting objections, but each species wanted to lead the response personally. The proud Draknari refused to serve under anyone else's command. The Logical Quantum Collective insisted on mathematical analysis before taking action. The ancient Titan Lords demanded recognition of their historical military authority. While the council argued about leadership and procedures, more worlds went silent under Void Seeker attacks. The Raiders had anticipated this exact response. They knew that mature civilizations would waste precious time on protocol, while their enemies acted with brutal efficiency. Junior Ambassador Thal of the Meridian Confederacy watched the chaos with growing horror. His people were dying while the Council's senior members protected their pride more than their populations. He finally stood and spoke words that others only thought. "The humans would have stopped this before it started," he declared to the shocked assembly. Their intelligence networks gave early warnings. Their military coordinators prevented exactly this kind of synchronized attack. "We dismissed them as primitive, but they kept us safe." Counselor Vex's Tar responded with angry energy pulses. "The human species lacks the wisdom to handle galactic security. Their emotional thinking would have made this situation worse." But privately, intelligence reports painted a very different picture. Void Seeker forces had avoided human space completely. Not one attack had targeted human colonies or shipping. More disturbing, intercepted communications suggested the raiders viewed human territory as too dangerous to assault. The breaking point came when 3 million Antaron refugees faced extermination on the planet Sanctuary. The evacuation ships trying to rescue them were failing due to poor coordination between different species rescue fleets. Draknari commanders refused to take orders from Silrani captains. Ethereal vessels wouldn't communicate with solid matter species. Quantum ships operated on mathematical schedules that ignored desperate pleas for flexibility. Captain Park Minna commanded a Silrani medical frigate that was trying to load wounded civilians. Her ship could only hold 2,000 refugees, but 30,000 needed immediate evacuation. The other rescue vessels were scattered across the system, each following their own species rescue protocols. "The Void Seekers will be here in 6 hours," she reported to the fragmented rescue fleet. "We need coordinated departure schedules and shared destination data. Without proper planning, we'll lose entire convoys to raiders." But no one had authority to coordinate the different species. Each rescue commander answered only to their own government. The result was chaos that played perfectly into Void Seeker hands. That night, Junior Ambassador Thal made a decision that would change galactic history. Using an old encrypted diplomatic channel, he sent a message directly to Ambassador Minjun Kim on Earth. The transmission bypassed all official council protocols. "Humanity was right to withdraw from our failed system," the message began. "We let pride blind us to your true value. But innocent people are dying because of our mistakes. I speak without authority from the senior council, but I beg you to consider helping those who cannot help themselves." The message included tactical data about Void Seeker positions and refugee locations. It also contained something unprecedented: a formal apology from a Galactic Council member to a species that had been declared primitive and unfit for serious responsibility. On Earth, President Lee Ga-young convened her emergency cabinet to discuss the crisis. Intelligence reports confirmed that millions of lives hung in the balance, while the galaxy's mature civilizations failed to mount an effective response. "They rejected our help and called us primitive," said Defense Minister Park Kyung-min. "Why should we risk human lives to save species that despise us?" But Dr. Song Mi Ran, of the Diplomatic Corps, offered a different perspective. "Our strength was never in holding grudges or demanding recognition. We withdrew to preserve our dignity, but we don't abandon innocence to prove a point." The debate continued through the night as more worlds fell to Void Seeker attacks. Earth faced a choice between justice and mercy, between pride and compassion. The decision would reveal whether humanity deserved the respect they had been denied. President Lee Ga-young made her decision at dawn after a night of intense debate with her advisors. The emergency cabinet had argued for hours about whether humanity should help the galaxy that had rejected them. Some wanted revenge for the insults they had endured. Others urged compassion for innocent people caught in conflicts not of their making. "We don't abandon those in need regardless of how they have treated us," the president announced to her senior staff. "But this time we act independently. We are not rejoining the Galactic Council or asking for their permission. We help because it is right, not because they finally want us." The response was immediate and massive. Admiral Kim Tae-jin received orders to deploy the entire human defense fleet to assist with refugee evacuations and anti-raider operations. But the mission parameters were clear. Humans would coordinate their own operations and invite alien cooperation on equal terms. Within hours, human warships were jumping toward the disaster zones, where Void Seekers threatened millions of lives. The fleet moved with precision that amazed alien observers. Every ship knew its mission. Every captain understood the overall plan, and every crew member was prepared for coordinated action. Admiral Kim's flagship arrived at Sanctuary, just as Void Seeker raiders began their final approach to the refugee camps. 3 million desperate Antarons waited for evacuation, while alien rescue fleets struggled with communication problems and jurisdictional disputes. "This is Admiral Kim, of the Human Defense Corps," she broadcast on all frequencies. "We are here to assist with civilian evacuation. All rescue vessels are invited to join our coordination network for maximum efficiency." The response revealed how desperate the situation had become. Silrani captains immediately accepted human coordination, despite their traditional independence. Dragnari commanders swallowed their pride and requested tactical assistance. Even ethereal vessels began following human flight patterns for the first time in their history. Captain Li Min-ah commanded a human rescue transport that could hold 5,000 refugees. Her ship docked with perfect timing alongside alien vessels as the combined fleet worked under human coordination. Where chaos had reigned before, now there was order and hope. Evacuation schedules synchronized. She reported to the flagship. Antaran medical teams are treating wounded while we load families. No conflicts between rescue crews. The evacuation proceeded with clockwork efficiency. Human ships provided protection, while alien vessels carried refugees to safety. Communications flowed smoothly through human translation systems that had learned to bridge language gaps between dozens of species. Within 4 hours, all 3 million civilians were safely away from the approaching raiders. But humanity's most devastating response came through intelligence sharing. Captain Park Soo-jin commanded a stealth reconnaissance ship that had been monitoring Voidseeker movements since the crisis began. Human intelligence networks had never truly shut down. They had simply stopped sharing information with species that called them primitive. Broadcasting Voidseeker tactical data to all defending forces, she announced as her ship transmitted detailed enemy positions and movement patterns. The information included everything: fleet compositions, supply lines, communication frequencies, and planned attack routes. The data transformed the entire conflict overnight. Alien defense forces that had been reacting blindly to surprise attacks now had perfect intelligence about enemy intentions. Trap formations caught Voidseeker raiders as they arrived at what they thought were undefended targets. Supply convoys were intercepted and destroyed before they could support further attacks. General Kareth Mal, the Voidseeker leader, watched his carefully planned campaign collapse within days. His forces had depended on galactic disunity and poor coordination. Human involvement destroyed both advantages simultaneously. Dr. Kim Young-soo led medical teams that treated wounded refugees of every species without regard for political affiliations. His hospital ships provided care that alien medical systems could not match because humans understood the psychology of trauma across different cultures. "The human medics saved my daughter's life," reported a grateful Antaran father whose family had been rescued from the attacks. "They knew exactly how to calm her fears and treat injuries that our own doctors could not understand." The humanitarian response revealed humanity's true strength. While other species excelled at specific technologies or military tactics, humans understood how to coordinate different groups toward common goals. They could make natural enemies work together, turn competitors into partners, and create unity from diversity. President Lee addressed the galaxy 3 days after the crisis began. Her speech was broadcast on all major communication networks, reaching every species in known space. The words were simple, but their implications changed everything. Humanity offers aid, not as supplicants seeking council approval, but as an independent civilization choosing compassion over pride, she declared from the Earth Assembly Chamber. "We help because innocent people deserve protection, not because anyone has asked us to return to our former role." The speech continued with an offer that stunned galactic observers. "Those who prefer hierarchy over collaboration may pursue their own path. We will no longer participate in systems that judge worth by age rather than merit." The response was immediate and profound. Within hours of the president's speech, formal requests for bilateral treaties arrived from dozens of species. The peaceful Silrani wanted scientific cooperation agreements. The industrious Antaran survivors sought trade partnerships. Even some Dragnari military units requested joint training exercises. Councillor Vextar attempted to restore the old order by sending an official invitation for humanity to rejoin the Galactic Council. The message emphasized that humans would be welcomed back to their appropriate position in the established hierarchy. Ambassador Min Jun Kim's response was polite but absolutely firm. "Humanity appreciates the Council's invitation, but must respectfully decline." We have established our own diplomatic framework based on equality and mutual respect. Species seeking cooperation will find us receptive partners. Those requiring subordination may look elsewhere. The rejection sent shockwaves through the galactic establishment. For the first time in recorded history, a younger species had refused membership in the Council and created their own alternative system. More shocking, other species began choosing human partnerships over traditional Council relationships. Within months, a new diplomatic network emerged around human space. The Independent Cooperation Alliance grew to include over 50 species that preferred merit-based partnerships to age-based hierarchies. Trade flowed more freely, conflicts were resolved more quickly, and scientific progress accelerated dramatically. The old Galactic Council still existed, but its influence dwindled as members defected to the human-led alternative. Younger species especially embraced the new system that judged contributions rather than counting years since first spaceflight. 2 years later, Ambassador Kim tended her garden on New Geneva, the diplomatic world humanity had built to house their growing alliance network. Ships from hundreds of species docked daily at the orbital stations above. The surface held embassies, designed to accommodate every type of alien visitor. A young Silrani diplomat named Kethara approached through the flowering pathways. Her crystalline features showed the excitement of someone about to share important news. Ambassador Kim, the Meridian Confederacy has voted to join the alliance officially, she sang in the musical Silrani language. They are withdrawing from the Galactic Council and requesting full partnership status with humanity. Minjun smiled as she watered the earth roses that grew beside Antaran, singing flowers and Draknari flame blossoms. The garden represented what they had built together. Different species, creating beauty through cooperation, rather than competition. Send them our welcome and an invitation to the next summit meeting, she replied. We'll need to expand the conference facilities again. Above them, the stars held a galaxy slowly learning that wisdom came not from age but from willingness to grow. The future belonged not to the oldest civilizations but to those humble enough to choose partnership over pride. Humanity had found their place among the stars not by demanding respect but by earning it through service to all who needed their unique gifts.